Hey guys, I just want to talk about a couple things. The ill winds from the Webbot when they originally talked about the attack on Iran by Israel. They hit some kind of underground facility, causes radioactive waste to get into the air, etc. That was their interpretation of the data. And again, the Webbot is a tool. It's not perfect. They have to interpret certain things. Sometimes a lot of data is there. It's easy to figure out what it means. Sometimes it's not, and it just seems obvious, but then in the end, it actually turns out to be wrong and quite different, whatever the case may be. Still a pretty invaluable tool. So anyways, they were talking about the oil leak, right? And there's lots of talk about the methane getting into the air and all the crap coming out of that oil leak. All that stuff, and it was making the news everywhere, 40% increased methane, 1,000,000 times more than normal, blah, 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 people getting sick. So again, the Webbot says, well, obviously the ill winds we got wrong, and it appears that it's the oil leak that the ill winds were attached to. Man, it's hard to agree. I mean, at first it's easy to agree and say, yeah, it does make sense, because it does make sense. But then, like, the last couple of days, especially today, something else comes in the news, out of left field, basically, and like, oh, that might be what that meant. It's just amazing how some things like that come out. And what I'm talking about is these wildfires raging in Russia. And they're getting close to Chernobyl, which is where that radioactive waste is for like a 20 square mile area from the Chernobyl nuclear power plant incident in the 80s. And its radiation levels are too high there still for anybody to even live there. I was reading an article the other day about these pigs, wild pigs going through there, rummaging, eating, whatever, and then they go off wherever else they go, and people would hunt them and find out that the damn things are radioactive and they're too high radiation for people to eat. Amazing. So now I hear yesterday and today, I think it was yesterday and today, that people in Russia, scientists, government, etc., are quite worried that these wildfires, because they're still out of control and they're heading towards Chernobyl, if they get there, people already have gas mask type stuff on, they have face masks, everything, in certain parts of that town. I'm not talking about Chernobyl area yet. Just in general, people are like having health problems now from the massive crap in the fire that they're breathing in, the air. So their concern is that what if it reaches Chernobyl, and then that crap that's still in the ground and on the buildings and would catch on to the fire, would burn it down, the trees, the grass, everything, whatever's there, the growth, the vegetation, which isn't being kept up with, obviously, because no one's there. So it's all overgrown, ripe for a nice fire. If that catches on fire, those particles, obviously, will get into the air and could definitely cause some major problems. Radioactive waste being spewed into the air, even though it's fairly low quantities, it doesn't matter. It'll still kill you, still make you very sick. So I thought about that, and sure enough, it's in the news. That's specifically, they're worried about that. And again, the Webbot, as they explained before, and they gave 3 examples of how it could be, and I can only think of 2, I think. A, they make a forecast, and the only thing that happens is people start talking about it at that time in the future. Even though it's an event that no one really knows about yet, in the future, something happens and then people start talking about it. And it doesn't actually happen, it just, for some reason, people start talking about it. Therefore, it doesn't happen, nothing to worry about. The other thing is that it's talked about because people are talking about an event that just happened, and are reacting, whatever, and now talking about it. That's how their predictions kind of usually work. So that's pretty much it. Or he said, I think the third one was that people can foil something from happening by talking about it in advance also or something. And unfortunately, usually the case is that the event happens and people are talking about it. But here's a prime example. Nothing's happened yet, and people in Russia, scientists and the government, are concerned that this waste, or that this fire, can get into the area where Chernobyl is and cause that crap to get into the air and absolutely cause massive people to flee. So I started thinking, well, I remember that 40-degree latitude they keep talking about. People go above the 40-degree latitude. And trying to think. I'm pretty sure I looked for Chernobyl, and it's not. I think it was like 51 degrees or something. I don't remember, but I'm quite certain it wasn't 40 degrees or even anywhere near 40. So why would people go above 40 degrees latitude if that was the case? It doesn't make sense. Doesn't necessarily mean that you're not about to hear about millions of people fleeing if this in fact happens, which would still be a prediction. It's just that they didn't get to the 40 degree thing. Who knows what that's about? It could also be that when that stuff gets into the air, if this happens, and it starts circling the Earth through the jet stream or whatever, certain areas that do flee north, say specifically the U.S. or wherever, or certain parts of China or North Korea even, run to the north part of their area, above 40 degrees. I don't know. I'm just speculating. But I just wanted to bring that up because it's interesting how weird things can kind of come out of left field. Who would have ever thought a fire would start raging? I mean, we hear about them in California all the time. But in Russia, that's like massively out of control. It's heading towards Chernobyl. And now this is being talked about. I mean, this isn't something the Webbot guys or anybody could say in advance, oh, we know what the ill winds is. It's, they're only as good as the data. And the data, with just the very nature, by the very nature how it works, that's why you can't rely on it. You can't sit here and say, I'm a 100% Webbot fan. I'm 100% going to listen to every single prediction they have, and I know exactly what's going to happen because they said it's going to happen just like this. You'd be a fool to do that. I'm sorry, and I'll tell you, I stick up for the Webbot a lot on some of the message boards and stuff that I visit. Because I'm a firm believer in them, and I know that sometimes I'll make a prediction and they get the year wrong or the date wrong, but then it happens. So it's interesting to watch like the precursor events. The precursor events have already happened for this year. General McChrystal, that was one. The one before that was Nancy Pelosi getting chewed out by the Code Pink lady, completely embarrassed her in front of everybody. Those happened. I mean, those were precursor events which were amazing, especially because the Webbot said you're going to hear about a ranking general in faux pas taking place from that. So, anyways, that was a precursor for people fleeing due to something, heading north by the millions, whatever. So, I just wanted to talk about that for a minute, that I think maybe the ill winds might be this. It also still might be the oil leak, because I think we're being lied to still, and the videos I'm watching now are showing coordinates on the ROVs that are showing them on the well site A, which according to documents they already filed with the government months and months and months ago. They've already capped, sealed off, done, they're not messing with it. And then they went over to well B and started doing their thing, and this is the one that caused all the problems. After that storm came through and they had to move all the ships out and all the equipment out, when they came back, the coordinates changed, and they were hovering over well site A, which is why the cap, apparently to some people that they're showing pictures on YouTube, is different. And they've got videos that show both caps, and they're two different caps. So, I mean, I haven't really followed it enough, but that's interesting, because if that thing isn't fixed, and it's still causing problems, and crap is still getting into the air, or this thing blows out, and methane is released, then I'll have to go back and say, well, damn it, it wasn't the freaking Chernobyl thing and the wildfires. It was actually the oil leak like they had originally, said recently. Again, it's hard to do this when you're dealing with a Webbot, but you just have to sometimes look at what's going on around you, say, well, that's got to be what it is. And then something even better comes along, which right now, I'm sorry to say, is the Chernobyl thing with the fire getting over there. That fire would absolutely pick that stuff up in the air and go God knows how many miles away, without a doubt. That would be devastating. So, anyways, we'll have to keep our eyes open. I'm going to make another video right after this that is about, that I'm going to read you the comments of Cliff High, which is the Webbot owner, talking about, or basically saying he apologizes to his friend George because I guess he didn't agree with him about something, and then now he's realized maybe he was wrong for not agreeing, but it's not a big deal. But he mentioned some interesting things about the Webbot and stuff, and some things we ought to be seeing here shortly. So I'm going to make another video on that right now, so I'll talk to you guys later.